Well, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Kitchen Table TCG. My name is Louie. Today we are going to be talking about grading cards, both Pokemon, Magic, Sorcery. I hope you have yourself a fantastic day. Today we're going to hang out and just chat and answer. I get a lot of questions about grading, and I want to talk about my philosophy on grading cards and why I grade some cards and why I don't grade others and why I grade with who, all the things. I'm going to kind of vomit out a bunch of information for you. I would love to hear your opinions on all these things. I would never claim to be an expert on this kind of stuff. I have learned a lot over the last couple years, and I am always learning from you as well. So I just wanted to talk about all the things. First and foremost, when it comes to grading, the card game that you are grading is vastly important when it comes to who you're grading with. This is my opinion, okay? I'm going to share all opinions here today. I believe that who you grade with is very important depending on what card game you are grading. And I also believe that you can learn a lot from other games. Maybe you don't care too much about Pokemon, but you can learn a lot about other games by seeing how their graded card market works and what people care about. Because typically people are the same, and eventually things will catch up to all games, in my opinion. So first off, let's start with what I think the most graded cards ever are, which is Pokemon. Pokemon, in my opinion, has the highest rate of people who collect graded cards. I don't think it's really contested at all. So what can we learn about Pokemon in the kind of graded card world? First off, there's a big difference between modern and vintage Pokemon in terms of what you can expect to get as a grade and what you can expect to get as a premium for those grades. For a vintage Pokemon card, a 7, 8, 9, 10 is going to get you a premium to a raw card. Maybe a 7 would be maybe the kind of average price for a raw card, but typically if you are able to get an 8, 9, or 10 on your card, you're going to get some sort of premium. In other words, a raw Blastoise in near mint condition would sell for less than a PSA 8 first edition Blastoise. When you get into modern, though, it's basically 10 or bust. When you're talking about modern grading for Pokemon, a 9 and below from PSA is going to get you about the cost of a raw card. In other words, it's not worth grading it unless you're going to get the 10. And the premium really only exists in modern cards for a 10. And that's really important. Now, there is a difference between the premiums too. In other words, like this Charizard is a modern card. It's one of the metal cards. I actually just got this back today. It's pretty exciting. This is actually what jump started this video. But this premium is super high for a 10 because it's just a harder card to grade. The way they packaged these wasn't super good. And so it's a much more difficult. The premium between a 9 and a 10 is extreme. Whereas something like this Mew EX, which is seeing a lot of these be graded right now, a 10 premium is going to exist, but it will exist a lot less than something like this that is more difficult. The other thing that matters is how many people are currently grading the card. A long time ago, 2 years ago, there were a lot of people grading Gengar VMAXs, the alt art here. And so the 10 premium would have been less than it is now because people aren't ripping these out of packs every day right now. It's much more difficult to get these in a raw version now, which adds to the premium. In other words, because less are being graded, the premium goes up for a 10. The only other thing I wanted to talk about with Pokemon is PSA is definitely the number one graded. I mean, I really rarely grade Pokemon with anything else. The only reason I would grade Pokemon with another company is if you were trying to get a additional, grade. So like if I wanted to cross grade this to Beckett to try to get the extra 0.5, that matters in Pokemon. I don't think it matters that much in any of the other card games. The volume of buyers is just so high for Pokemon. There are people who collect, first edition Neo Genesis BGS 8.5 sets. There is that buyer in the market. Whereas there's a buyer for a PSA 8, right? Like there are people who collect the grade of the full set and that kind of thing. And so for Pokemon, you could entertain the idea of cross grading to another company like Beckett just for the additional 0.5. a 8.5 would see a slight premium over an 8 if it was the same card. So I think that's an important note. All right, that's the Pokemon stuff. Now let's talk about Magic, because Magic introduces this bizarre additional part to the game of grading, where people actually play the game with the cards, and nobody is playing Pokemon with a first edition Blastoise. That doesn't exist. That person, there's nobody sleeving up a Pokemon deck with vintage old, high-end Pokemon. Now there is like base Neo leagues that happen, and that's kind of growing a little bit right now. But for right now, it's vastly collectors. Whereas with Magic, you have people who are actually playing the game. There are people who will be mad that this Mox Sapphire is even in a slab because they could be playing with it. And I get that. And it adds an interesting dynamic to this whole grading thing, where a lot of times a raw version of a card would be worth more money than something like a 5.5 or something under the 8 threshold. Remember I said on vintage cards, 7, 8, 9, 10 are going to get you a premium. Below that, for Magic, occasionally you will find it easier to sell, and therefore you will be able to get more money out of it if it is raw. Like this, as a moderately played Mox Sapphire, would probably be an easier sell if this was not in a slab. In fact, I bought this slab. I did not grade this myself. When I go to sell this, I will probably break the slab up in order to sell it. Or I will maybe offer that to the buyer, because a lot of people will want to play this card in Legacy. There's actually November is a big Legacy tournament scene, so a lot of these Moxes and stuff like that will go up in value at the end of the year due to a lot of people who are looking to put these in decks and play them. So when there is a more interest in playing, there's a less premium for the grade, unless you're in that kind of 9 and 10 range for Magic. And so that's something to entertain. That's something to know. If you're going to grade your cards, you might not want to grade some of the higher end vintage cards because people who buy them want to put them in decks. And so that's important. So unless it's for your own personal collection, like I've entertained the idea. I have a BGS 8 Black Lotus, and I've entertained the idea of trying to get the Power 9 and BGS 8. I think I'm just going to end up keeping them raw instead, but I've entertained that because people care about that. The other thing people care about in Magic compared to Pokemon is the subgrades. That's a big thing for Magic. These subgrades, people really enjoy that. They enjoy collecting that. There is like things like a quad. So if this was a BGS 9.5, there's people who collect like BGS 9.5 quads. So all 4 of the things would be 9.5s. That's what a quad is, and there's a premium to that. There's a small premium to some of the Pokemon of those too. Like Pokemon's kind of the catch-all. Everything matters to Pokemon. There's somebody for everything in the Pokemon world. But for Magic, it's a little bit of a smaller community, but that kind of quad grading matters quite a bit. All right, so let's move on now to Sorcery. To show you guys one of the things that I really care about and love, I am trying to collect a BGS 9.5 of certain sets of cards for Sorcery. And so this is the Philosopher's Stone I graded. Now I wish that this was a quad. Like I missed the centering, and for Sorcery the centering is really hard because it's a little bit angled. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a little bit off kilter, which makes grading these really, really difficult. Makes getting a 9.5 quad very, very hard for Sorcery. I have 110 for Sorcery in Beckett. So why choose? In my opinion, why choose Beckett over PSA or another grading company? Well, in the world of grading, there are 2 grading companies, really 3 grading companies that have been here for forever, and that is PSA and Beckett, and actually SGC even came before Beckett, I believe. The other grading companies are much newer. They are cheaper, they are easier to grade, they are whatever, they have flashier slabs, but these companies have been in the market absorbing market share for graded cards for 30 years. They've been involved even longer than that in some of the baseball things. And so I have a hard time grading with other companies because almost everybody who buys Sorcery cards, for instance, comes from somewhere, either collecting Pokemon or from playing Magicthegathering, and so they have a history of seeing Beckett and PSA and these iconic companies, which makes breaking into a new world much more difficult. It's just a risk that I don't see the downside risk in grading with Beckett compared to some of the other grading companies. So that's why I chose Beckett. I chose Beckett over PSA because I believe that a lot of Magic the Gathering players prefer Beckett. They like the subgrades. It's just kind of, it's maybe 50-50 on the PSA to Beckett train for Magic. But for whatever reason, I just kind of get the opinion that more people prefer Beckett on Magic. And I believe a lot of people come from Magic the Gathering to go play Sorcery and the high-end collecting. And so that's why I have gone with Beckett for what I grade my Sorcery cards with. And this gets into the idea of like collecting. I think there are people who are going to want to collect sets of, BGS 9.5, or maybe it's CGC pristine 10s or whatever they end up doing. And that's something that's pretty conducive to collecting. And I think that's really cool. Collecting a newer game, you have that opportunity because it's really difficult to get a 9.5 Mox Sapphire, right? But you have that opportunity in a new game to collect high grade cards of things that you like. So those are my thoughts on grading. I've done other videos on like grading the graders and how to send and how to submit. You can check out the channel for those things. But for a philosophy of grading, that's kind of where I sit and where I fall in my own personal collecting stuff. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you disagree with. I know that grading is a very contentious discussion, and there's a lot of very strong beliefs about what you should do or what you shouldn't do, and I would love to hear those from you in the comment section. Hopefully you guys have yourself a fantastic day. There's also a group chat or a Discord thread in my Discord server about grading and grading discussion, and so if you have questions to ask other people, that's a great resource for you. You can join that Discord at KitchenTableTCG.com. Have yourself a great day. Be kind to the people around you. We'll see you again next video.